Well, this is a little sort of extra episode of the Meaningful Money podcast, and I'm joined by my great friend and repeat guest on the show, Neil Bage from BIQ. How you doing, bud? You all right?
I'm bearing up.
Yeah.
I'm bearing up in this strange times, Pete. But you know what? I'm all good. Thanks.
Yeah, good. And yeah, it is strange times. And you reached out to me actually, for which I'm very grateful. Just suggesting that because past episodes with you being one of the country's foremost behavioural finance experts, past episodes with you have been very well received. And I tell you what, up until now, a lot of that has been largely theoretical, right? And now it's very much here and now, very real. People are wondering what on earth they should do, what on earth is going on. So, you know, we don't have a whole lot of fixed questions like I might otherwise do. We're riffing, man. So perhaps we just start by, I think, maybe reassuring folks that it's okay to be worried right now.
It absolutely is. And you know, Pete, I would go as far as saying if you aren't worried, then there's something probably wrong with you. You know, this isn't just about money. And I know your podcast is the Meaningful Money podcast, right? But this goes beyond money.
Sure.
This kind of goes right to the core of us as a human being. And when we are in the middle of a world that is seemingly falling around our feet, you know, it's really, really, really hard to immunize yourself from all of that noise. There's too much noise, and like I said, it goes beyond money and goes right to the deep-rooted human emotions, and every emotion that we have, fear, anxiety, worry, all come to the fore. So anybody who is worried right now with what's going on, please rest assured you're just being a normal human being, and there's absolutely nothing wrong in that.
I think that is a good place to start. It's, you know, I have seen some, not a lot, but I have seen some sort of online messaging from people just saying, hey, it'll be okay, this is short-lived, and, you know, let's just all, you know, be cheery about it. And there's almost sort of an enforced kind of almost a militant, I will be okay no matter what. And I kind of get that, but I think surely it seems to me that there's a lot more. It's wiser first to understand and accept our natural human reaction before we try to take stock and impose or control how we react, as difficult that is. Is there a sort of catharsis in accepting our humanity and that our reactions are normal?
There is, but it's also really difficult to deny them. You know, so if you just think about the biology here, so the biology is really quite well known, well established, well understood. You know, when we sense fear, our brain kicks in, and it kicks in what's called the sympathetic nervous system, which everybody who's listening to this will understand as the flight or fight. Fight or flight, depends which way you say that round, mode. So we either stay and battle because to get through the fear, or we run. You know, so the old adage is, you know, in days gone by, we see a lion running across the savannah, we run. But actually, when our life is threatened by something that we can get it right in and fight for, then we will. And this is a survival mechanism in every human being on the planet. So when we sense fear, we either stay and fight or we run. Now, the problem is in modern life is we don't have lions chasing us anymore. You know, most of us on the planet. Of course, some people still do. But we typically in the Western world don't have lions chasing us anymore. And yet that kind of the fight and flight mechanism is still very much a part of who we are. And it's been replaced by other things. So when we see a pandemic sweeping the world, and when we see the stock markets falling by, you know, and it's not just the depth that the stock market has fallen, it's the speed at which it fell. You know, they will trigger your sympathetic nervous system. So we're now in an unconscious state of fear. And yes, I can sit and accept, oh, this is perfectly normal, but I can't turn it off.
No.
I still sit and mull over what's going on and think, will I be okay? Will my family be okay? How are we going to get through this? And then what we do for comfort is we turn on the news and we hear different stories, or we go on social media, and that's the worst place to be at the moment. That's a pandemic in itself.
Yeah.
And we see and we start taking in all of the news that we're seeing, and of course all of our behavioral biases that I've talked about on this very show kick in. Confirmation bias, loss aversion, probability neglect. They all kick in, and they create this kind of an enhanced uncertainty in our heads. So I can accept I'm a human and I'll panic, but it doesn't mean that I can't stop myself panicking.
Yeah. It might feel to many people, I suppose, easier said than done. And I wonder if part of that is because there's a real lack of control. So I guess if, you're in a mountain pass and you see a cave line coming towards you, your options there are pretty binary. And obviously you can't control the fact that the lion is much bigger and sort of pointier than you are. But here we have a global pandemic, and we have market forces which are 100% outside our control. So I imagine that probably elevates the fear thing. It's almost, if you're driving a car and you hit some black ice, the thing that's most scary is that you can't do anything. You are absolutely at the mercy of physics. And it's that lack of control which I think contributes a lot to people's fear. And so it's something that I've always said often here is that as difficult as it might be at times, we have to concentrate on the things that we can control and try not to give too much headspace to the stuff that we can't. Would you agree with that generally?
I couldn't agree more. I was brought up, my parents brought me up, and it's something that I still hold dear to me as a value of mine. I was brought up to only concentrate and give all your effort to everything that you can do that is in your control. Anything that is outside of your control, be aware of it, but actually don't try to influence it, because you can't. And what you end up doing is wasting a ton of emotional effort to try and come to terms with something that is completely out of your reach. The stock market, for example, you can't control it. It's going to do what it's going to do, and therefore, don't sit at home think, what can I do? You can't do anything. No. What you can do is control your reaction to that, and the way that you want to move forward when the dust settles. You can control that. So I'm a big advocate of what you just said, Pete. Kind of control what you can, and do all you can, and put all of your effort into controlling what you can. Everything else that sits on the outside that you can't control, it's not worth the stress, because I'll tell you what, it will send you into a place that's not a good place. You'll forever be in a state of anxiety and worry and panic and fear, and that's just not good. Not only on your mental health, that's not good on your physical health.
No, sure.
It's one of these things. We can't control the spread of the pandemic around the world. We can control the spread of it in our own lives by doing everything that the government is saying, right? So I can do that. I can't control stock markets falling, but I can control me tightening my belt and kind of going, right, okay, I'm going to stop a little bit of discretionary spending. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that, just in case. So I can do that. So we can all do little things that actually ultimately combine to have a good impact on what may end up being a very different world that we live in.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be different. I think obviously this is not the meaningful virology podcast, so we can obviously speak very little into the what's actually
Correct.
going on in the world. But as far as finances are concerned, obviously the market declines have been, I think it's fair to say, unprecedented. Like you say, not the depth of them. We've seen declines like this before, but never quite so fast. I mean, the FTSE 100 and most of the major indices are down in the region of a third, 30 to 35%, somewhere like that.
That's right.
Now, listeners who are in, I tend to preach multi-asset, so we'll have hopefully a spread of assets, but also many people, particularly wealth builders, will be in 100% in equity. So you will be nursing some serious losses right now. So there's some things we need to remind ourselves, and they almost become mantras. The purpose of a mantra, of course, is that it becomes subconscious. It becomes part of who we are by means of repetition. So that's why I tend to bang on about so I have quite a few of those mantras here on the show, and long-time listeners will know what those are. But in so doing, it can help us to become more automatically able to cope with some of these things. Like,
Yeah.
A loss is not a loss until you sell. So even though portfolios might be looking pretty sick right now, that loss is not realized until you bail out into cash.
Yeah.
And so then the cause of the loss is your action. It's the stuff you can control rather than market movements. Up until that point, up until the point you sell, it's entirely a theoretical loss. It's a paper loss,
it's a paper
if you
loss.
like. Yeah. Don't feel like it though, does it?
It doesn't feel like it at all. It really doesn't. This is really interesting, Pete, because so let's just slightly step back. You're absolutely right. The speed at which this market fell, I mean, it fell, I might be wrong with my figure here, but it fell something like 15% in a week. It was incredibly quick, the decline in the market. And that genuinely shocks. If you go back to 2008, I think, and gosh, I'm digging into real memory here. I think the market, or early 2009, maybe it was around 3,800, something like that. And it had fallen from 6,500.
Something like that, yeah.
But it fell in I think there was like a 12-month period.
Yeah, something like 12 or 18, something like that, yeah.
That's right. So it was a much slower decline, but a much deeper decline. But actually, this has been so rapid. This is ripping the plaster off type thing. There you go, deal with that. And so that in itself is really hard. And the natural reaction of people when something happens like that really quickly, of course, is things like loss aversion. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to lose money. I'm losing money. What if it keeps falling? And we get surrounded by a whole bunch of uncertainties. Yeah. And as you've already alluded to, and I've said on many podcasts with you, humans do not like uncertainty.
Sure.
We don't like ambiguity. We don't like not knowing what's going on. So when the market is falling and it's falling and it's falling, and I go online and I look and people are going, oh, it's probably got further to go, which is guesswork, which is annoying as well, because it really isn't helpful for anybody speculating about something that is out of their control. So the natural reaction to people is to react. But I've always said that people, not taking in action. So going, right, I'm not going to do anything about it. People think that inaction is absolutely, I'm not doing anything, I'm being lazy. But to not take action is a conscious choice. Therefore, you are taking action. You are taking action to be inactive. So people think, oh, if I don't do anything, that's not good. Maybe I'm being lazy. Maybe I should do something. No. Listen to your financial advisor. They know best. They've been through this. This isn't their first rodeo, So kind of, yes, try and sit tight, stick to your financial plan, but actually get on the phone and have this conversation and tell your advisor that you're scared. It's all right it's okay to be scared and to be fearful, and allow them to talk you through this. But, I was at Pete the other day. I tweeted about this. I'm 45, right? And so I still have a way to go before I would take any of my retirement money. And my pension is relatively equity heavy.
Mine too.
It's there. I'm leaving it. It's there and it runs, and I very rarely look at it. I, like every other human being, knowing all the behaviors that course through my veins, see the news and think, oh, I wonder what that's done to my pension. Oh, maybe I should do something about it. And then my intelligent part of my brain, which isn't very big, kicks in and kind of goes, no, Neil, practice what you preach, mate. So what I did is I affected a strategy of inaction.
Yeah.
And look at it. I didn't even open it up. I thought, I don't want to see it, because if I see it, then that's an additional piece of information I need to deal with. Because at the moment, I know it's fallen. I know it has. By how much? Don't know. And actually, do you know what? I don't care, because I've probably still got 20 years of my life for this thing to recover. So I don't look, and I get that that's only a segment of your meaningful money listeners would fall into that category of, I've still got X number of years left. It's different if you're approaching retirement, because your time frame is now massively reduced to make these to recover. But if you listen to your financial advisor and you had a diversified portfolio and you had equities and bonds and cash and a nice mix in there, then actually the drop, your blow should have been cushioned anyway.
Very much so. Yeah.
You know, but and I'm not a financial advisor, right? I'm a behavioral guy, but I still understand the value of diversification and not looking. You know, if you don't need to look.
Exactly. I mean, even in unprecedented times, those things stay true. I mean, we got clients in all kinds of mixed portfolios. The clients who are down the most are in a sort of moderately adventurous, maybe 75 to 80% equity, somewhere like that, 70 to 80 perhaps. A couple of those has just tipped down past the 20% decline. So why the stock market's down 35 and you're only, in inverted commas, right, down 20? Yep. That is multi-asset in action. It's still no fun. And obviously, I've got to have conversations with these clients. But a more balanced investor will probably find themselves somewhere between 10 and 15% down at this point. Now, it's still a lot. And when you translate that to pounds terms, depending on the numbers, obviously, which because I've long since learned that advisors think in percentages, but real people think in pounds, because that's what they can spend and eat, then yeah, it's still scary. I like what you say, actually, about inaction being a positive choice. And because we're so wired to do, aren't we? What can I do to escape this scary situation? I either fight or I fly. But actually, in this kind of situation with the stuff we can't control, doing nothing, positive inaction is an entirely valid, and in fact, without a question, to my mind, the right response. I recently did a show about avoiding absolutes, so perhaps I shouldn't say it's the right response or the best, but it's because only hindsight will bear that out. But that's right. I'm convinced it's the best of all options.
It is. Right now. It absolutely is, and like I say, you know, there's a great bit of research about goalkeepers in, you know, UK soccer goalkeepers who were researched into where they stood for penalties. Oh, yeah. And nearly every one of them moves, and nearly every one of them doesn't save the ball. And the statistics are absolutely crystal clear on this. If the goalkeeper did nothing, if they made a conscious choice to do nothing and stood still, they'd save more penalties.
It's not why they pay the big bucks, is it?
But they're paid, exactly right. They're paid 50, 60 grand a week to move. And you know, and therefore they move. And it's a really similar thing to this, you know, if you want to kind of save more metaphorically, then standing still and not moving at this particular point is probably the right thing to do. But you know what, saying that, I said to you, I didn't look at my pension, right? And the market kind of hit around last week 4,900, something like this, and then I go, hang on, I still, in my pension, I have a chunk of money in cash. But there's like 20% wiped off the investment model that I'm in here. So then I went in and I took the money out of cash and I put it back into the market. You know, and that, by the way, knowing all the behaviors that course through my veins, was still click and enter on my keyboard was really scary.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, because I have no idea, right? So it's only my best guess. But it was only at that point did I see how much money I'd lost in the scheme of things, and I'd lost 13%. So 13% of my pension has gone. But actually, if I then go, well, no, the market's cheaper now, so I'll put my cash to work. And on the upside, hopefully, the equities and the bonds and the other diversified assets I have will gain traction anyway. But that cash will just give it a bit of a bolster on the way up. Yeah,
sure.
And then when the markets have recovered, I'll reassess.
Yeah, rebalance and
sit back, you know. But so sometimes you have to look if you want to do something about it. Yeah. But if you don't need to do anything about it, then actually, in this instance, in these unprecedented times, kind of being blind to it is good for your psychology.
Yeah, for sure. And I imagine that follows for media consumption, which of course is just all pervading, isn't it? And I mean, we talk about confirmation bias. You know, one of my staff went home earlier this week. Her son, who is A-level year, said there's a confirmed case at the college. Girl is on a ventilator. So my staff member immediately rang me and said, do you want me to come in tomorrow? I was like, okay, no, let's just get to the bottom of this first. Of course, absolutely not true. 100% jungle drums at work. And as it happens, through a connection, I actually know how many people are in ITU in Royal Cornwall Hospital in Truro, because we know somebody indirectly that works there. And so, it was very easy to ascertain that wasn't true. Nothing official from the college. And so jungle drums at work, and that can really exacerbate people's sense of panic and concern. And yet at the same time, we want to be open to what's going on and, up to date with the latest guidance and stuff like that. I mean, how on earth do we navigate that, man? Is there an easy way? Surely not.
Isn't an easy way. And I was having this conversation with my family recently about people on mobile devices all the time, and what people tend not to realize, and it doesn't happen with everybody's mobile device, but what people tend to realize or not realize is, if you keep looking at news on your phone, then your mobile device will start to self-curate, and it'll start to deliver news headlines based on your viewing consumption, right? Yeah. So if all you're looking at is pandemic deaths, then you can get in a week, that's all you're going to start seeing, right?
Yeah.
That gives you confirmation bias, and that's never good.
Yeah.
But Pete, we live in a really unusual time, full stop. Forget what's going on in the world regarding our health and what's going on in the world regarding our money. We live in really unusual times anyway, because we're bombarded with information so quickly and from so many different sources. We just haven't got the time to filter through it all. So we have to kind of accept what we see and hope that everything we see is true. And it's really difficult when you're seeing 30, 40, 50 different sources of news coming at you about the coronavirus, for example. Well, which one is that true? Oh my God, there's been a case in Truro. Oh my God. It has there? I'll tell you what to do. Instead of listening to kind of Mary, who's just said that, go onto the government's website. They're updating it every day. Look at the reported cases. Look at an official source. So when I was looking early on, and I wrote a blog about what's going on, my source of evidence was the World Health Organization's website. It's the only place where you can get true data.
Yeah.
I don't care about what John said. I really don't care. It'll be biased anyway. So, my only tip to people is, especially during the current times, is if you want to know what's going on and you want to try and give yourself some comfort based on fact and evidence, then only go to the official channels. Twitter is not an official channel. LinkedIn is not. Instagram is not. Whatever social network you use, Facebook, they're not the official channels of news. They are where people who are human beings, who are scared, who are anxious, who are highly behaviorally biased, are coming together to talk to each other. And that's never going to be a place to get good, fact-based news. It really isn't. Remove yourself from it and go somewhere where there is evidence, and that gives you comfort, because then you know that this is the fact. I can deal with this. Remove the ambiguity, and say, right, that's the fact. What's the fact? Well, I'll tell you what a fact is. That in China, there's been no more reported cases in the last 2 days. Okay, that's a fact. I know that. How long were China in isolation? 3 months.
Okay. Yeah.
That means if that's the same for us, it might not be. Then that means this. You can start working with evidence, but if somebody's giving you different stories from different sources, you can never reach that point of comfort, And so I say this to all of my friends and to all of my family: just go find the evidence. The evidence is there, especially during things like this. The evidence is there. Just makes you feel better a little bit.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about sort of reminding ourselves of the objective truth, the mantras, if you like, things that we can use to forcibly engage our logical brain and just try to quieten the the caveman brain, if you like. That's a terrible term, but the understandable human base fear, just using mantras and reminding ourselves of what we know to be true historically. And then we talked obviously about being careful about what we're consuming and going to evidence. What about the role of advisors in all this? And I'm studiously avoiding using the word financial advisors.
So you and I have had this conversation before, and I think we may have even had this conversation one time on the few occasions we've got together in a pub over eating a pizza, I think it was, if I remember rightly. I am a huge believer, I always have been, of what I call a trusted advisor. And that doesn't necessarily mean a financial advisor. What it means is someone who you trust, who you can go and speak to about your deepest worries and your deepest concerns, and of course all the positive stuff. I'm not saying that you don't talk to people about that,
Sure.
but in these times, everything that's coursing through your brain, having someone who you can talk to is really important. And I'll tell you why. If we keep telling ourselves stories, and these stories stick up here, and I read news and I watch social media and I see, and I'm bombarded with noise, what happens is I update the story in my head, and if I keep this story within here, very quickly it can become toxic. It can get dark very quickly, even for the most positive people in the world. What's going on at the moment, you can tell yourself a story and it can get pretty dark pretty quickly. Talking to somebody else, even though they may be going through the same thing, they are seeing the world through the unique perspective of their eyes. Yet they're not seeing the world exactly like you're seeing the world. They take information in differently. And it may be having a conversation with somebody else just opens up your mind to something else that gives you a little glimmer of light. It allows your story to be updated with somebody else's perspective, and therefore it kind of prevents it to a degree from becoming as messed up. So in times, I have a handful of people who I explicitly trust, who I can talk to about anything, who I know will never judge me, who I know will be fine for me saying to them, "I'm not okay, actually." And they won't turn around to me and say, "Come on, British, stiff upper lip. Come on, fight through." They won't do that to me. They'll say, "Why?" And they'll put their arm around me and we'll have a conversation. And I'll say, "Oh, I think this." And they go, "Yeah, but." And it's those "yeah, buts" that actually allow me to think, "Oh, maybe they're right. Oh, actually, I'm going to think about that." And I update my story. And as humans, we have an amazing ability to draw strength from other human beings. So kind of isolating yourself and just keeping your own narrative flowing doesn't do anybody any good, So
No, for sure.
Find a trusted advisor. It might be your wife, it might be your husband, it might be one of your kids, your best friend, your financial advisor, might be your financial advisor. But actually say to someone, if you're not, say to them, "I'm not okay. Can we have a conversation?" And that conversation could turn out to be a really valuable part of the overall recovery process that we're all going to have to go through.
Yeah, so important. And I suppose I was chatting with one of my colleagues here this morning. One of the positives in all this is that there are now more resources for that than ever before, thanks to the miracle of the internet, of course. Now, we can't beat, we're humans, we can't beat in-person contact. But if we are isolated, then at least there is a very good alternative in that we can seek like-minded folk online, if that's what it helps.
That's right.
So it's interesting. I've seen quite a lot of content creators that I would watch anyway. People like Pat Flynn. He's going live 8 o'clock every morning, just for an hour, coffee, answering questions live on YouTube, which I just think is amazing. So people are just asking you questions, how they might adjust this in their business based on what's going on and all that sort of stuff. And, that's a great thing to be able to do, which wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago.
That's right.
And I mean, from my point of view, there's 3,500 people in the Mean for Money Facebook group, and it's an incredibly supportive community. It's a unique atmosphere in there. Actually, everybody's kind and considerate and thoughtful in the way that they speak to each other, which is unusual, let's face it, for online groups. And so that's a good place to start. I'm saying all the time, if just reach out, send me an email. I'm getting a lot of email at the minute, and
I bet you are.
spending a lot of time just trying to reassure people while at the same time not sugarcoating it or anything like that. So from my point of view, do reach out. It's, I have a nagging feeling that the last 10 years of building this audience and doing all this work was to some extent for this time,
That's right, Pete. And actually one of the things, that we've talked about on your podcast, we've been building our behavioral insights app, our free app, which is on the App Store. And we're about to launch a service for financial advisors. And completely unbeknownst to us, the exact thing that we've built it for is playing out in front of our eyes. Yeah. We never hoped it would, actually, because actually having that behavioral insight at any time is absolutely really valuable, just understanding who you are. But now is kind of the time when people, and again, maybe that becomes part of that trusted advisor reach out, just playing a few games and realizing who you are, and actually who you are is all right. There's nothing wrong with who you are and how you're reacting. That's who you are. And accepting that, this know thyself, that's who I am, is also a valuable lesson for us all to go through at some point. So, and now better than ever, probably. But you're absolutely right, especially about your Facebook group, you've got, I sometimes come across as dismissive of social media, and I'm not. I'm not on Facebook, but I am on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. But at times like this, for many people, it's the way that they can reach out into the world and to connect with other human beings, and that is absolutely crucial, especially as more and more people are now forced to work from home. And that's novel. That's something else they've got to get used to. That's different in itself, So there's lots of new kind of stuff being thrown at people to deal with. So just reaching out to somebody, and I would urge people to do this. Just reach out to somebody and just have a chat. Get a coffee, have a chat with them, and just say to them, "What do you think? How are you getting on?" And realize that you're not alone. It's important.
Yeah, it's important. Cool. Thanks, man. I think that's probably a good place to leave it. We have no idea how this is going to pan out, but I have unshakable faith in human resilience and in the fact that we really like to buy and sell stuff from and off each other. So I'm fairly sure that the economy will be okay at the end of it. That's right. Of course, it's easy for me to talk in macro terms. There's going to be some human collateral, both in obviously loss of life, which is just unthinkable, and financial repercussions for individual people as well, jobs lost, companies falling. So I can't possibly minimize any of that, but this too shall pass, and I'm convinced that we will emerge stronger, because that's what we do as a species. So I'm encouraged by that, while at the same time we're doing everything that we're encouraged to do by the government to keep ourselves and everybody else safe. So Neil, thank you so much for joining me, man, for this little special episode. Thank you for reaching out and suggesting it in the first place. I'm indebted to you for that.
You're very welcome.
Stay safe, mate.
You too. Take care, mate. See you. Bye.